Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
All right, folks, welcome back for part 3 of the review of Salisbury off of the album Salisbury by the band Uriah Heep. Let's just pick right up where we left off in back into the song.
Somewhere in your eyes, that very special glow, something drawing me to where I do not know. I never really thought that I would lose myself. Now I'm going faster than anybody else. You move without a sound and touch me with your hand, just like the waves that fondle every little grain of sand. And this thing we're gonna do is just for you and me, and I'm gonna make it good. Just you wait and see.
So here we have a couple of throwbacks to the intro to the song. We've got that pulsing rhythm that's coming from Ken on the B3, very strong this time, really cutting through, whereas before it was a lot more gentle and buried in the mix. And then you've got, the strong brass, you got the hits, and you've got this great vocal from David repeating the first verse, but with so much more power and emotion that he's singing with here than he did in the first time that we hear these lines. Just incredible stuff. And now we're going to head into the ending of the song, which, again, another twist. They couldn't just leave well enough alone. We got to have something different here and some really interesting mastery. And while we're listening to this part, keep in mind, this would have been difficult to do actually with a click track because of the way that the tempo is going to be, as you'll hear. But certainly they really had to be on par and watching each other and be really aware of where each other was going to be to make this work. Because if they were too off from each other, it would sound too sloppy and disconnected, and it would be distracting. But it's actually done very, very well, as you'll hear going through the end of this song. And it gets some interesting tones in here. So let's check out the rest of the song. A little bit impassioned and a little bit haunting at the same time, I think, that last section. But certainly is a great ending to the song. It's not one that fades out. You get a conclusion. And I think you deserve a conclusion after going on this epic journey. It's really just so powerful all the way through, all the parts, so much of it. You've got rock, you've got jazz, you've got orchestral, you've got great vocals. It's a song that I think we can all identify with lyrically. Just amazing from beginning to end. And, it's been actually a little bit exhausting doing this episode because there's so much energy here. I kind of am wiped out, but I'm really glad to do this song. It's one of the ones that when I first thought about doing this podcast, it was one of the ones that immediately came to mind that said, this is going to be a fun one to cover. And certainly by every stretch of the imagination, it absolutely was. this is, what some people consider to be sort of the pinnacle of the band, but I highly disagree. This is only their second album. They've got 22 other albums that they've done just up to this point. They're writing another one right now. And there's a lot of great stuff that goes between here and there. But I think the reality of it is that this song, it's just one of the highlights that has come across this band over the years, but certainly one that sets itself apart from all the other ones, because this is really the only time that we've heard a song of this magnitude from this band. It's an experiment that was not really tried again. And it really is a thing that kind of stands alone. It's almost like if they wrote this for another reason for being, other than being on an album. It's like if they wrote this for a film soundtrack or to be part of a play or something like that. Whereas it works with the album, it works with the rest of the songs, but it's kind of its own thing at the same time. It's really interesting how that plays out, at least for me. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but what sections are your favorites? What is it that draws you to this song? I'm really curious to know what everyone's feelings are on it, because I think this is probably a bit of a personal journey for everyone that actually listens to the entire 16 minutes of song. I think a lot of people, I don't know how you would stop listening to it though. Like, at what point do you just go, I've had enough, and you stop? Like, wherever it's carrying you, I kind of feel like I have to go. Like, I don't have a paddle. I'm just in the canoe, and the water's going to take me where it's going to take me. And I don't really want to get out of the boat. I just want to keep going to the destination until we hit, slowly crawl up on sand with the waves pushing us, kind of like the ending of the song. But what I was saying about the tempo and the click track, if you were listening to that part of it, you could definitely feel it speeding up, but everybody has to be, together, and at least very close to being accurately 100% together. It's okay to have a little bit of a variation, but they were very on the mark. It feels really good. There was nothing so far off that it took me away from what they were doing. If the notes are too far off, like if the bass and the drums were just, a half a second apart, it's going to draw you out. You're not going to be in the song anymore. You're going to be outside of it going, wait a minute, what just happened? So you need to be precise in a point like that. And they did it. It was great. It sped up perfectly. Very patient, that part. And it just ended with that big, powerful scream and the drum roll, and just a cacophony of sound. And then the diminishment at the end, as everything just kind of breathed out its last breath for the song. Very powerful ending to a very powerful song. It's really a journey, this one, and I'm so happy that I was able to bring this to you. I'm very anxious for you guys to hear this song. Even if you are familiar with it, I'm curious to see what your guys' thoughts are on this one, because it's definitely something that sets this band apart from other bands, as if they weren't already. They took all the skills that they've been using with the harmonies and the powerful voice and the solos and everything, and then they just took it in a different direction for this song. Just amazing. Thank you guys so much for following through with me on this one. I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I have. For sure, it's been a blast. And we're not quite done just yet. I did take a moment to reach out to bass player Paul Newton, and he was kind enough to let me know that the orchestra was recorded after the band had finished their recording. So the band laid down all their tracks, they went away, and at some other point the orchestra was brought in to do their parts. I don't know if the arrangements were written then or not. He wasn't really involved with that part of it. So hopefully we'll be able to find out a little bit more at some point. But definitely a very interesting process. It's not uncommon for the orchestra to be brought in after the band if they're done that way, unless the whole album is done together. Then there might be some other arrangements. But if it's just like one song or a couple of tracks or some filler, a lot of times the band does their thing and then the orchestra is brought in afterwards. Sometimes the orchestrations aren't even written until the recording is done, so the orchestrator has something to work with, because there weren't mock-ups back then. Nowadays, if I work on a film, or if somebody hires me to write a theme or something for them, I could do what's called a MIDI mock-up and send it to them and say, well, here's basically what it's going to sound like if we hire session players to actually play this. It's going to sound a little bit different, but it'll have basically this feel to it or whatever. And we can do that at an incredibly low cost. Whereas back then, the only way you were going to hear what it sounded like with an orchestra is if you brought in the orchestra. So it really took some careful orchestration to really make the song happen, because there's so much that the orchestra is doing, both in the sections and the soloists as well. But very interesting nonetheless. We also have this this second version. I can't imagine if this maybe got played on the radio. Well, no, because it says it was unreleased. So I'm not sure what this was for. If this was for promotion, I really honestly have no idea why this version would have been done this way. But the unreleased version of Salisbury that's on this album, and you already know by the fact that it's one disc only, you know that it's going to be heavily edited down. But it went from 16 minutes and 17 seconds to 4 minutes and 21 seconds. And they just basically just chopped out all of it and just, made very little room for the instrumental sections. It's just pretty much what it would have been like if it was a pop song. And then in the end, this is probably the most disheartening part to me. They start fading the song out when Mick starts doing his first solo. And I'm like, why would you take this amazing solo and just fade it into oblivion? That makes no sense. So I don't know what the purpose of this particular edit was, but I think even not knowing the song, like if this was the first thing that I ever heard of Salisbury, I think I would be saying, where's the rest of it? Why is the solo just fading out the song? Like, what happens in the solo is really good. Why are you just letting me not hear it? I think it really would have bugged the hell out of me. So I could see why it wasn't released. I have to think it was some kind of promotional, like, let's give the record company a sample or something, because it just doesn't make any sense anyway. So just for your own amusement, I'm going to play the ending of it, and I think you'll be able to pick up, where it starts, and just let you kind of hear how they just take it away from you. It seems so unfair, but that's what happened. And let's check it out and see what you guys think. Actually, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the beginning for you guys so you can just get a feel of where it starts from. So, in the beginning, you've got the brass, you've got the keyboards, you've got a lot going on, that big build up. And in this particular edit, here's where it starts. So really, it just kind of dives into the build-up for the first verse, the way that any pop or rock song would. But you're going completely out of the context of the emotional setup and the strength of the orchestra and the keyboards combined. So it's really kind of it's a little bit off-putting. And I think even if I didn't know the song as well and I heard this first, I would think it was kind of a strange place to start. It feels like there must have been something that led up to this point, because it's just kind of in the middle of a phrase. It doesn't really seem to have any any reference or anything at all. So that's how it started. But let's, obviously there's a bunch of edits in the end. The jazz section and all that was cut out. But let's just hear how it ends, because this is one of just the weirdest things I've ever heard. What the hell? You can't just cut out the end of a great solo like that, but they did. That's what they had to work with in this version. So it's very strange. It just feels so just off to me. And then, of course, knowing the song as well as I do, any section that was taken out would have been an injustice to the song, because everything deserves its place in the song that's there. I don't care how long it is. If it was 25 minutes, I would probably be saying the same thing because there's just nothing boring about it. It's a long song, but it doesn't feel long. It doesn't feel like you've spent a quarter of an hour of your life listening to it when it's done. At least I don't anyway. I don't find anything feeling repetitive, even though there are repetitions in there. I don't find it boring in the least. It's a great moving song. And, I don't normally do this, but I just looked around the liner notes about the album a little bit. And I found that this song was actually written mostly at Fox and Hounds Pub in Chiswick, London, which I am not familiar with. I know that we've had Fox and Hounds pubs here in America. There was one in Peoria, Arizona that I went to a couple times. Very nice place. I don't know if it's affiliated at all or if it's just a ripoff of the British idea. But, the one in Arizona was very nice. I liked it. Been there, I would say, more than a couple of times. Also, interestingly, the tank was noted to be too violent for the United States, which is why they came up with the alternate cover. I don't know how you go from a tank to a guy ripping his own flesh apart, but that's what they did. And I still think it's a cool cover, but I don't understand the concept jump from one to the other. I don't really understand how a picture of a tank, even in 1971, was deemed as too violent. I don't know if there was something maybe specifically going on at that moment, but I don't really know why that cover wouldn't have been accepted in the United States, except maybe that it wasn't really understood as a concept. And also as a side note, Mick had said in there at the time that he did the liner notes that it was a 22-piece brass and woodwind section. So that probably makes sense because it doesn't sound like it's a huge section of either. So for it to have been a 27-piece brass section alone, I think would have probably been, well, I mean, it all depends on how they recorded it and how they mixed it in, but it doesn't sound that big. It sounds big, but it doesn't sound that big. And then that wouldn't account for how many pieces the woodwinds was. So I think that feels a little more comfortable for me, that number of 22. And but who cares? At the end of the day, it sounds good. It really does. It's just the right blend. I think anything more would have been overkill. If they would have gone for strings or percussion, I think it would have been too much. I think it would have been just muddied up the mix more. I think that it's exactly what it needed to be, this song. And then on a side note, there was a note in there from Ken Hensley that said that Lady in Black was actually their top selling song. Now, I don't know what year that was said, but as of the time of that saying, when he was interviewed for the this deluxe re-release, that's what he had said in his comments. So very interesting. I would have guessed Easy Livin'. But, it all comes down to so many factors. I mean, there's single sales, there's reissue sales, there's compilation sales, which you're probably going to have Easy Living and Lady in Black on all the same compilations. But maybe one has a live version and one doesn't. Then there's the, any licensing opportunities. Like I think Gypsy is actually licensed in a television show. And so if Lady in Black was licensed one or more times more than Easy Livin' was, that could be a huge game changer. Even one licensing deal could be a huge game changer. So, it's hard to say what brings it about. The success of a song commercially does not necessarily constitute whether that is the best song that the band made. That really comes down to personal opinion. And sales or, the figures, the dollar figures, whether it be from licensing or from sales, doesn't really have anything to do with what their best song is or which ones are your favorites. A lot of people get sick and tired of the ones that have more of a commercial appeal because they hear them too much in comparison to the other songs. And then the other songs feel like these little hidden treasures because the hits have gotten so much attention. I've said on many occasions that I feel like the hit songs, the 45s or the single releases nowadays are the ones I end up really kind of forgetting about because those just lead me to buy the album. Because I don't like to buy singles necessarily. Most of the time I'm going to buy an album now because I realize that if I like a song by a band, there's a good chance I'm going to like something else that they did. And I'm probably, missing out completely of my own fault on all these other gems that are on the album. So if I like a song by a band, I'll probably like at least one more or be able to learn something from it. Maybe they do things a little bit differently, have a different sound approach or a different writing approach. So I kind of look at it as a fan and as a student as well. And I just find opportunities in there. And I'll give the album, one or two run throughs, and I'll pick out the things I like and the things I don't. But, it's interesting. So many people say like Lady in Black is my favorite or Easy Living is my favorite. And that's great, but it's just not driven by the commercial success. It's whatever song touches you. And I'm one of those people that, if you ask me what my favorite Uriah Heep song is, I would probably name you 10. And then if you ask me again in an hour or 2 hours, I would probably come up with a completely different set of songs with maybe one or two crossed over. Like Poet's Justice will just always be on that list no matter what for me. And we'll get to that in a couple albums when we get to Demons and Wizards. But it's a very personal thing. So I never really look at the commercial success of a song as necessarily what the band's best song is. It's just the ones that cut through for whatever reason at whatever time. And, it could be that they played it at a festival and that festival got a huge amount of notoriety. And so that song just got driven up with it. And then the record company goes, hey, well, let's release this as a single. And then the next thing you know, it's shooting up the charts. Doesn't mean it's better than the other songs. It just means that that's the one that the people that make those decisions found that pathway. Now, I think Lady in Black is an amazing song. I love Easy Livin'. They're definitely in my top songs as well. So don't feel like I feel that they're lesser songs because they were successful. I don't by any means. But the success itself, is what it is aside from the overall music catalog of the band, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So, my thing is if you like the band, listen to everything they do and pick out which ones you like the best. For me, Salisbury is definitely one of those songs. I would love to have, how they have like pedometers and stuff like that. I really wish I had like a song odometer that could tell me how many times I've listened to a song, because I think of all the songs I've ever known and listened to, I would have to think that Salisbury at least is in the top 50 for number of times, just sheer number of times I've listened to it. And it being such a long and epic song, that takes up a good chunk of my time in my life. And obviously I really love it. Otherwise I wouldn't be doing that. I would be listening to other things. So, this is one of those moments where I just want to thank the band and everyone who was involved in putting this song together, because this is one that definitely means a lot to me. A tremendous amount of effort went into it. A lot of people had to back the idea of doing the orchestra, and, the guys in the band certainly paid for it. So thank you, everyone who was involved in that. And that's pretty much it, guys. That's Salisbury. We did it. We got through it. As I wind this down, I'll just remind you about the contest. Go and find my SoundCloud account. Find the song that you think was inspired by a song on this album, or at least I shouldn't say the whole song. I should say a riff from this album inspired a song that I wrote that is currently on my SoundCloud account. I'll say it that way. And then all you have to do to get in on the contest is just reach out to me at UriahHeepPodcast at gmail.com. And the first one to send in the correct answer will win a digital download of a Uriah Heep album of your choice from either iTunes or Amazon. Or if there's another place in your country and I can figure out how to make it work that works better for you, then we'll do that. But either way, I'll get you a digital copy of a Uriah Heep studio album. And thank you, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me through these, it's been about an hour and a half, I suppose, going through a 16-minute song. So obviously I had a lot to say. We will see you guys tomorrow we'll see you on Thursday for the last song on Salisbury, which is a bonus unreleased track. So you guys have fun, stay safe. Cheers. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show, and thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!